Yasodanandana Raja Janarajana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Ratta Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Prabhupada Stotra Sutta Shishivadi Tavai Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Hila Prabhupada Ki Srimad Bhagavatam Gantaraj Ki. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Gaur Premananda. Hari Hari Bo. Thank you very much, Mataji. You can come play in the Dunga anytime. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are studying the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, Text 18, Lord's Pastimes out of Vrindavan. Ayajaya Dharma Sutam Ashvamedha Stribir Vibhu Sopi Shamam Manujay Raksha Reme Krishna Manuvrataha Ajaya Dharma Sutam Ashvamedha Stribir Vibhu Sopi Shamam Manujay Raksha Reme Krishna Manuvrataha Ajayat made to perform Dharma Sutam by the son of Dharma Maharaj Yudhisthira Ashvamedha by horse sacrifices Tribhi three Vibhu Supreme Lord Sa Maharaj Yudhisthira Api also Shamam the earth Anujay assisted by his younger brothers Rakshan protecting Reme enjoyed Krishnam Krishna the personality of Godhead Anuvrataha constant follower. Translation: the Supreme Lord induced the son of Dharma to perform 3 horse sacrifices. Maharaj Yudhisthira, constantly following Krishna, the personality of Godhead, protected and enjoyed the earth, assisted by his younger brothers. Purport: Maharaj Yudhisthira was the ideal monarchical representative on earth because he was a constant follower of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. As stated in the Vedas, Upanishad, the Lord is the proprietor of the entire manifested cosmic creation, which represents a chance for the conditioned souls to revive their eternal relationship with the Lord and thus go back to Godhead, back home. The whole system of the material world is arranged that program and plan. The whole system of the material world is arranged with that program and plan. Anyone who violates the plan is punished by the law of nature, which is acting by the direction of the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Yudhisthira was installed on the throne of earth as a representative of the Lord. The king is always expected to be the representative of the Lord. Perfect monarchy necessitates representation of the supreme will of the Lord. Maharaj Yudhisthira was the ideal monarch on this principal subject. Both the king and the subjects were happy in the discharge of worldly duties, and thus protection of the citizens and enjoyment of natural life with full cooperation of material nature followed in the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira and his worthy descendants like Maharaj Parikshit. Durgame parimendasya skalatvati kutumahu svakripayustu dhamana shanta shantalambanam homagyana timarandasya jananjana salakaya chakshurun militam jena tasmai shri guruve namaha. So today we are speaking a little bit about the days of yore. So just to put things into perspective, this is a conversation that Uddhava is having with Vidura. Vidura is he's been on pilgrimage for quite a number of years, and he's lost track of the happenings where Krishna is and what's been going down. But he heard that Krishna left the planet, and he come across Uddhava, who had so much association with Krishna, had been with Krishna for over 100 years, and he asked if he'd seen Krishna. Of course, Vidura heard that Krishna had left the planet to go back to his own abode, and now Uddhava, he's recounting some of the epic moments that he'd spent with Krishna, and he'd been with him for that long, and we've been reading about so many different incidents. So now he's mentioned Krishna at the Yudhisthira Ashvamedha sacrifice. So Ashvamedha means horse sacrifice, which is quite frequently mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I will elaborate a little bit on this. It's very, very interesting because we are dealing with the days of yore in history. As we know historically that we're in the age of Kali Yuga, and that there are 4 ages. We all know the 4 ages, don't we? Satya, Treta, Dwapara and Kali. So in Satya Yuga, because it was such a long age, people lived to be like 100,000 years. The principal way to go back to Godhead was through meditation, meditating on the Lord within the heart. Then in Treta, which means 3/4 of Satya, fire sacrifice was the principal way of achieving salvation. So we're talking about Ashvamedha and Rajasuya as the big fire, the big sacrifices, major world events. Just like in our material sphere, we have a material but big major world event, such as the Olympics, and everybody becomes involved. So this is the Rajasuya, Rajasuya and Ashvamedha, that everybody has to become involved, and has to be on side. If there is some country that is not on side, then there is a bit of a attrition, bit of a battle that goes on, and it's just until they decide, okay, we're on side, we're with it, and they have to pay a tribute. So this Ashvamedha sacrifice, that was actually even performed by Krishna in his incarnations, Lord Rama. In fact, he did 3 of those, and that Ashvamedha sacrifice actually involves the sacrifice of a horse on the altar. So any animals on the altar that are sacrificed have one purpose, that they're actually meant to test the mantras of the Brahmanas and the purity of the Brahmanas, and that mantra actually rejuvenates the animal. So because the animal is rejuvenated, there is no karmic reaction, therefore killing the animal. In fact, the performer, which is usually a king, so in this case we talk about King Yudhisthira, he would be absolved of any other karma that he accrue, just like if there's a big war and there was so much bloodshed, so the Ashvamedha sacrifice would counteract that. So that's in that age what we call Treta Yuga, right? So then we have Dwapara, which is temple worship, and then we go down to Kali, which is sort of 1/4 of the qualities of Satya Yuga. So it's not possible in the age of Kali, so it is forbidden. The potency of the mantras and the purity and the spiritual strength of the Brahmanas as chanting has been lost in this age of Kali. Manda Sumanda Mateo. So we do have fire sacrifices, but in the fire sacrifice we throw in bananas only, right? So maybe some grains and seeds and sesame seeds, right? So actually it's more, rather than a sacrifice, it's a ceremony. So sometimes the yajna, it's like it's setting up the fire. It's a rite of passage. So we have this fire yajna. Yajna is a beautiful word. It's a rite of passage. So if there is an initiation, someone receives diksha from the spiritual master, or a marriage, or just as we saw a couple of weeks ago when the students from the yoga teacher training completed their course, and because they've learned so much bhakti in that course, it was a rite of passage, and it was rightfully so that they had a fire yajna. It's a rite of passage. Very, very auspicious occasion, actually, a great ceremony. So with the Ashvamedha sacrifice, which was done in that particular age, it is also said in the Upanishad, I can find a reference, I don't know where it is at the moment, but it's there, it states that one who is a vegetarian and who does not harm animals, he receives the benefit of 100 of these horse sacrifices. So this is the auspiciousness of not killing animals, respecting the fact that there is a soul in every body that is living. So this Ashvamedha sacrifice, this horse sacrifices, was in days of yore. It was a very, very elaborate sacrifice. So explain a couple of incidents, because in the Bhagavatam there is a lot of sacrifices. These Ashvamedha sacrifices are mentioned. They were quite common amongst kings. So an elaborate affair, just like I remember, if we have a big world event like the Olympics. I know Sydney hosted the Olympics in year 2000. I was lucky to be privy to witness some of it. It was a spectacular event. Sometimes it's good to see these events, but what it did, because it was so encompassing, it actually nearly sent the whole city broke. So big affair. So in this yajna, a lot of wealth is required, and that Ashvamedha, that horse, it begins with it's like a 2-year program. So the horse is set out to roam free throughout the whole country. It's bedecked with gold coins and lots of fancy ornaments, and it moves from state to state. And wherever it goes, the state which it goes into, the kings or the people who are ruling that province pay tribute, and the horse is followed by a retinue of soldiers. In the case of Yudhisthira, it was Arjuna. So, and then after a certain period of time, 6 months or a year, the horse is brought back and the sacrifice begins. But at that time, the arena is set up. Hundreds of Brahmins are set up to chant the proper mantra. There's mantras. There's Brahmins checking the Brahmins who chant the mantras, and everything's going on. A very, very elaborate process, and all the ruling dignitaries from all over the world are invited to witness this great event. And in this particular occasion, Krishna was present at Yudhisthira's ceremony. So that was a very, very auspicious event. But before I talk about Yudhisthira's sacrifice, there's a bit of a lead up so we can understand a little bit more what's going on. In the Bhagavatam, I was only going to talk about one sacrifice, but I'm going to talk about two now. I'm going to talk about King Indra, because I reckon King Indra did such a dump on us yesterday that he ruined our festival. So I think we should talk about King Indra and how he stole the sacrificial horse. Right? So Maharaj, there was a very, very famous king called Maharaj Prithu, and we are going to discuss him in the next canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a really big treatise on him, how he was churned and he came out of the body of King Vena, a very miraculous occurrence, and he is, I believe, Shaktavesh avatar, an incarnation of Krishna. Maharaj, would that be right to say Prithu Shaktavesh? Yeah, an empowered incarnation. So he's not a full incarnation of the Supreme Personality of God, but he's a jiva that's been empowered by the Supreme Lord. So Maharaj Prithu put everything right. So the whole world was topsy-turvy by his father, who had so many, King Vena had so many demoniac qualities, but Prithu Maharaj, very just king, and he ruled. So it's like Srila Prabhupada said, a great king, and the subjects were happy in the discharge of worldly duties and protected the citizens and enjoyment of natural life with full cooperation with material nature, like that. So Prithu Maharaj conducted 99 horse sacrifices, ashvamedas, for auspiciousness, because for a king to do that, that creates so much, the demigods are there and the mantras are being chanted, is a sacred ritual, and it was a prescribed sacrifice. If he had have done 100, he would have qualified for the position of King of Heaven. So King Indra previously had performed 100 sacrifices to qualify his being the King of Heaven and to stay there. So he was looking down at the earth planet quite often as not only Prithu Maharaj but other kings see what they were doing, and as soon as they got close to 100, he became greatly concerned. So then when Prithu Maharaj was about to perform the 100th horse sacrifice, King Indra couldn't take it. He thought, here is a rival for my throne. This is the mentality that he had. So he come down, and while the horse was roaming about throughout the sacrifice, he stole the horse and took it away. So then it just so happened that one of Prithu's sons saw King Indra make off with the horse, and he tailed him, and he brought the horse back. King Indra somehow or other persuaded him to let him go, and he brought the horse back, right? So the yajna went on. But then King Indra wasn't satisfied, so this time he disguised himself as a brahmana, and then he took the horse again, right? Takes the horse, and then this time the son chased him, and he caught him, and he brought him back, and the brahmana was furious, and they were going to dispatch King Indra. Not only did he disrupt the sacrifice of King Prithu, but also he disguised himself as a brahmana, which meant that actually they put a black mark on the brahmana race, that people would be disguised as brahmanas, would carry out all sorts of devious activities, nefarious activities, and they were worried about the future. So they wanted to make an example of King Indra, and he was toast. They were going to toast him, right? So at that point in time, Lord Brahma himself, the creator, come down and he intervened, and he explained to everybody that King Indra, he's in charge, he's got a duty, even though he's sort of that he strayed from the path of righteousness at this point in time. He still has a very, very grave duty to perform for the running of universal affairs, and if he could be excused. So Maharaj Prithu forgave him, and he asked Maharaj Prithu to leave it at 99. You don't perform the 100th sacrifice. So Prithu was okay by that, and peace was restored. So the second epic tale of the Ashvamedha sacrifice that I want to discuss is in the 8th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, a bit further down the line. It involves a great incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anybody got any clues as to who I'm going to be talking about?
Sri Krishna.
Krishna, no. Sorry, Krishna in his incarnation. So what happened was that King Indra is ruling as the king of heaven, and then once again he just slipped up a little bit. He slipped up and he created offence to his spiritual master. His spiritual master, who was Brihaspati, saw him one day, and he had a beautiful Vajanti garland, one that actually never fades, right? And he passed it to King Indra. And King Indra wasn't quite paying attention, wasn't aware of the situation, so he put the garland around his elephant, Airavati, while he was sitting on the elephant. And the elephant grabbed the garland and threw it onto the ground. So the spiritual master was really incensed by this, and he left King Indra's association. So King Indra then realised that he'd actually made a big mistake. And at that point in time, we have the king of heaven, we have the king of the demons. Normally the demons, the Daityas and the Adityas. The Adityas are the demigods and the Daityas are the demons. So normally the Daityas reside in the subterranean heavenly planets. But this time Bali Maharaj, who was a grandson of Prahlad, and his father was, he reverted back to being a Daitya. So he was the king of the demoniac forces, and somehow or other, by pleasing his spiritual master, so King Indra displeased his spiritual master, Bali pleased his spiritual master, and his spiritual master, whose name was... Sukracharya, thank you very much. He became very pleased with him, and he had this potency that Bali became practically invincible. So then it took over Amavati, King Indra's heavenly city, the capital of heaven, and Indra couldn't do anything about it, and all the demigods fled and hid, and Bali reigned. And Sukracharya said to him, now if you want to stay king of heaven, you have to perform these 100 Ashvamedha sacrifices. So Bali began these sacrifices, doing one after another. He was getting really, really close. And the demigods are so concerned that once he performed his 100 sacrifices, he's going to be king of heaven forever with all the demoniac forces. So, of course, the demons in charge of heaven belongs to the demigods. So there's a sort of imbalance there. The universal affairs aren't running properly. So the demigods were concerned not only for their post, but they were concerned for the universal affairs of the universe. So they went to the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, who actually said, yes, I'll take care of it. So Bali was performing the sacrifice, very close to 100, maybe even the 100th one. I know, probably sounds like the 100th one. And they were in the middle of it, and this beautiful little dwarf Brahmana comes, effulgent, you know. And that was the Supreme Personality of God in his form of Vamana, so beautiful. And Bali was just immediately fascinated by this boy, and the sacrifice stopped, and Sukracharya was really concerned. He said, this is Vishnu, it's a trick, don't do anything he tells you to do. And he said, what would you like? Bali was so, because he was attracted to the Brahmana culture, because actually Bali was a devotee, and he's one of the Mahajans. So he said, what would you like? And the boy said, I only want 3 steps of land. He said, you're such a little boy, only 3 steps, how far can you go? 1, 2, 3. That, you know, ask for something else. I'm the king of the world. Universe, I can give you anything. No, 3 steps. And Sukracharya, he smelt the plot. He said, don't give him anything. Don't even give him 3 steps. He's going to trick you. So, of course, he gave him 3 steps. And with the first step, Vamana extended his foot, and he took up all the planets, all the heavenly planets. And then with his second step, his toe hit the universe, and it pierced the universe. And this is how this universe is famous. If you go back to the spiritual realm, they say, where did you come from? I come from the universe which was pierced by the toe of Lord Vamana. And then the causal ocean poured in, and that became the sacred Ganges River, or the Ganga. And it poured throughout the universe, and it's flowing through India today. So Vamana disrupted Bali, and then of course Bali was sent back down to the lower planets, subterranean heavenly planets. But because he was so committed to being a devotee of Vamana, that he said, I've taken 2 steps. What about my 3rd step? You've broken your promise. I've got nowhere to put my 3rd step. He said, please put it on my head. Okay? So Vamadev went down to Sutalaloka there in the subterranean planets. And Bali's in charge of the planets, and Vamadev is his doorkeeper, just keeping his association. Of course, in the next, when there's a change of Manvantars, Bali is scheduled to be next king of heaven. So there was 2 examples of Ashwamedha sacrifices in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So now we come to Maharaj Yudhisthira. So this is the situation that Maharaj Yudhisthira. Well, first of all, I'll have a few minutes. Are we all together? We're not too confused yet? We're all on page? Okay. So I mentioned 2 sacrifices, that there was the Rajasuya and the Ashwamedha. So I don't think any animals were sacrificed in Rajasuya, I'm not sure. No, that was just one of the chanting of the mantras, and it's actually for the king to establish his sovereignty all over the world. So when Yudhisthira, before the battle, he got sovereignty of half the kingdom. Duryodhana, the Kuru, from the Kuru dynasty, he was in charge of the whole kingdom, and rightly it was Yudhisthira's. It was like a whole will sort of contesting of, like whose inheritance was what, but Duryodhana claimed it. And even though Yudhisthira and the Pandavas were the rightful heirs, he said, well, okay, I'll give them half in the end. And he gave them like the desert, like he gave them like where Uluru is or something like that, right? So you can have that half, Northern Territory. I got the rest. So they went there and they formed this capital called Indraprastha. And because Krishna was there, immediately things started to flourish. And the kingdom started to grow and grow. It's beautiful. And all the citizens of the Bharatvaras, they wanted to go to Yudhisthira because he was just and righteous king and he was a devotee. So they all flocked there. So Duryodhana became more and more jealous. So when Yudhisthira set up this capital of Indraprastha, the architect of the demigods, Vishwakarma, went and built this beautiful Siddharma palace for him, which was just amazing. It just glowed at night and had all these wonderful features. So then Krishna advised Yudhisthira, well, now you can assert your supremacy and have a Rajasuya sacrifice. So then, of course, everybody was summoned from all around the world. The king, Maharaj Yudhisthira, is doing this Rajasuya sacrifice, very elaborate sacrifice. Once again, so many arenas, so many pavilions for all the kings to come with their armies. And the kings all came with tribute. And there was so much tribute that was given to Maharaj Yudhisthira, all these beautiful spotted horses, these rare animals, celestial jewelry, heaps and heaps of gold. And all the kings that came, they wanted to get in this particular arena to witness this performance of the Rajasuya sacrifice, which Yudhisthira Maharaj was going to perform. Krishna told Arjuna exactly where to go. So they went to the Himalayas and they brought back, like it said, like about 2 or 3 miles of donkeys laden with gold and carts laden with gold to perform the sacrifice. And so in the Bhagavad Gita, when you read the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna calls Arjuna Dhananjaya. So Dhana means wealth. So Dhananjaya means winner of wealth. So that's just one incident where Arjuna is described as Dhananjaya. So Yudhisthira performed not only one, but he performed 3 of these Ashwamedha yajnas, and that was just for the purification of his, as the king, he received the benefit of it. And actually, it's said that Yudhisthira became famous throughout the whole universe for his 3 yajnas, 3 Ashwamedha yajnas, whereas King Indra, he performed 100 of these, but yet Yudhisthira was more famous. As King Indra had so much opulence, so much more wealth, and Yudhisthira had Krishna. So because he was so much attracted to Krishna, that he became famous for his for his performance and his devotion to Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada explains that it's like the example of the sun, that the sun shines everywhere, but sometimes there's a dark spot where the sun can't shine. And then there is the person who actually goes into the sun and basks in the rays of the sun. So that is like the devotee. Krishna says that he is equal to all. He's like the sun, he shines everywhere. But if the devotee takes shelter of Krishna, then of course he gets the full benefit of the sun's rays. So he gets the mercy of Krishna. So this is Yudhisthira, got the mercy of Krishna, and is famous for that. So what is the purport to all this? So the purport to all this is we are now in the age of Kali. These yagyas are just from the days of yore. They're nice to hear. But the yagya for this age of Kali is Harinam. So, was it? Pritivite Chedato another Harigram. So the Harinam mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, given to us by Lord Chaitanya's prescribed mantra for this age of Kali, is equal and even more than the hundreds of Ashvamedas that are offered by the kings. How is that? So Ashvameda sacrifice give liberation, they enhance the prestige and the pious activities of the king, and even actually may, through that process, they may the persons involved in the process may attain liberation by Vaikuntha planet. But the Hare Krishna mantra is way beyond that, because it actually takes us to the topmost planet, it's Krishna's planet, and that is a reciprocal relationship with Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. There is no other planet that gives you that. So that is just that is called Vaishnavism. And Vaishnavism is that we actually personally become an associate of Krishna. So that Vaishnavism is hardly discussed in the Vedas. So how fortunate are we that in this age of Kali, the Vedas have been chanted for so many years and so many more auspicious ages, but still that knowledge of Krishna Bhakti is being hidden. So therefore, some Brahmanas and the Mayavadi sannyasis, they will say that this chanting of Hare Krishna is just in the mode of goodness. It has the same benefit as the Ashvameda sacrifice, the Rajasuya sacrifice, and whatever else. But from the Vaishnava standpoint of view, that is totally offensive. It is actually transcendental to all these ritualistic appearances, because it gives a direct knowledge of the self in a relationship with Krishna. In fact, we chant in the mornings, when we chant the 10 offences. Number 8. Come on, you pundits out there, what's number 8? To consider as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities often in the Vedas as fruity activities Kamakanda. So this is what we chant in the morning. So this establishes the supremacy of the Hare Krishna mantra. So this process is much easier than the other process in all the other yugas, and it's said that the demigods are lining up to take birth because they can get back to God in one lifetime. So this is our good fortune, that through chanting and dancing we can just make it back to God in a very short span of time that we have. So finish off with Bhagavad Gita 7:19. Bahunam jamanamante gyanavan mam prapachante. It says that after many births and deaths, he who is in knowledge of me, that's Krishna, comes to understanding of me, that I'm the cause of all cause and all there is. Such a great soul is very rare. So here we are. So we're all great souls, right? I don't think I am, actually. So what happened? I think we're just all lucky that we're all here, and we've got the mercy, you know. So we got the mercy of the Guru, so we've got to take advantage of that. Jai, Hare Krishna. Do we have any? Got 1 minute, maybe one question or two, or comment if anybody's got any. Doesn't matter. Nobody. We're all good. Jai, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Bol.